Colts at Texans, a week one divisional matchup to talk about next. And if I'm being honest, going into this game, based on what I saw film in the offseason, that type of stuff, I think I wanted to like the Texans, actually. But as we'll talk about when we go through the matchups and the actual players playing this game, not to spoil anything or whatever, but I don't know how well that's going to end up working out. But first, so we got the Colts offense here, starting with the away team. Not a ton of changes from last year. In a lot better health than they looked for most of that time. There are some changes in the wide receiver core for sure, and obviously Matt Ryan coming in for Carson Wentz, which, if you have eyes, is a very clear upgrade. Defensively for the Texans, a lot of changes on that side of the ball after their weird bottom-tier free agent spending spree they went off in the last couple of off seasons. But now, some rookies, some exciting players, some stuff to talk about for sure. So first, can this Colts offense move the ball? Can they run the ball? That's what we always start with. Kind of getting out of the way. The pass game is more important, but this one's quicker. And for the Colts, it actually is arguably just as important, frankly. So they really are a super high-volume rushing team. Everyone knows that. Jonathan Taylor leading the league in all the rushing statistics last year. A team that's built on a really strong offensive line. Frank Reich really likes to establish the run, all that type of stuff. Can they do it in this game? Well, with a fully healthy offensive line, it's hard to say no in most situations for the Colts, right? We're talking about multiple really high-level players. Quentin Nelson, one of the best guards in football, probably the best now. Brandon Brooks retired. Ryan Kelly and Braden Smith, really, really good players. Danny Pinter stepping into a starting role this year, a player that I actually do trust to be pretty good. And while I have problems with Matt Pryor, especially as a starting tackle, in this game, maybe not so much worried about it. And on the defensive front for the Texans, they're getting better. They're getting there, especially, again, as opposed to the last couple of years, but for what you need in this matchup with the Colts, it's still just not at that level. I like Malik Collins a lot as a player, but he's not like a one-man wrecking crew, especially against the run. And these other interior guys are just, I kind of low-key like Michael Dwumfor, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's good in this game, but not good enough. And then on the edges, this Texans team just doesn't quite have the talent needed, again, to keep up. Jonathan Grenard, they bring in Mario Addison, Rasheem Green, Jerry, like all literally everyone else on this list. Those guys are all useful players in their own way, and I do like these signings a lot better than, again, the ones they've been in the past. But in this specific scenario, the issue you're going to run into is that none of them really are going to control the edges against the really high-level force that is Braden Smith and, to a point, Matt Pryor, plus just how the Colts run the ball there anyway. Rasheem Green a little bit. Jonathan Grenard does show some play strength, that type of stuff, but it's probably not enough. So I do like the Colts kind of having an overall advantage throughout the entirety of the offensive line. And more importantly, with how often they run the ball and how well they do it. Now, I don't like their scheme to the level that I like the 49ers or Rams or something like that, but it's definitely not bad. And they will target linebackers to a point, and that scares me because these Texas linebackers are still just on the lower end of starters in the NFL by quite a distance. Neville Hewitt especially really worries me over a large number of attempts. It happened with the Jets. It's happened with the Texans. The guy just, he'll get out of position and get outran because he's not a particularly good athlete. Garrett Wallow did show some stuff towards the end of last year as a player that's okay for being on the field, but is he a difference maker? No. And Christian Kirksey is fairly limited to a between-the-tackle run stopper. So, and even if Grugier-Hills plays, I don't really trust him as a run defender over a large number of attempts anyway, too. So I do think you're talking about pretty significant movement of the line, a large number of attempts, plus, a team that's good at running the ball. They've shown that clearly. Also, like Eric Murray, he's kind of a bad run defender. So that concerns me. And then, can they move the ball through the air? Again, answer probably pretty good for the Colts here. Offensive line-wise, I do think this offensive line is more beatable than people maybe want to admit. There are clear weaknesses as far as player types that can give this team problems. Again, the Texans aren't the team that's going to fit that bill. Jerry Hughes is a good speed rusher. I do think he could beat Matt Pryor along the outside. Maybe Jonathan Grenard or Rasheem Green can do a little bit of work into the pocket against Braden Smith, whose play strength isn't incredible, but realistically, you're really reaching if you think any of these guys individually are going to be winning with any level of consistency. I like Malik Collins, like I mentioned before, but with Ryan Kelly, Quentin Nelson, I just don't see it very often. So you're not talking about a ton of pass rush, right? And that's kind of already an issue with Matt Ryan, because I do think Matt Ryan is really effectable. And again, when the Colts play better teams, we'll see what that looks like. But against this team, you're talking about Matt Ryan in a mostly clean pocket, throwing to weapons that, while I really don't love over the course of the season, work fine in this case. The Texans secondary is a pretty big question mark, obviously. Derek Stingley Jr. being a rookie, Jalen Petrie being a rookie, Steven Nelson coming over, and Desmond King still there as the solo kind of good player from previously. I do like Steven Nelson, actually. I do like that signing. He's pretty good. He's a reasonable starter in the NFL. They bring over MJ Stewart, who I think could play in this game too, who does help as a matchup weapon against some slot type guys. I actually like him, but neither of those guys are great. And while I have issues with Michael Pittman, Ashton Dulin, and Paris Campbell as players generally, in this game they are good enough to win. Michael Pittman especially. I don't want to talk too badly about him. The dude is still a comfortably useful receiver who will find space in the intermediate game. He does have strong hands, and he will be useful for moving the ball up and down the field. There's tons of rave reviews about Alec Pierce, second-round rookie from Cincinnati. We'll see once he steps on the field. I don't like talking about how good or bad rookies are, but is he likely to be horrible? No, and he's just as likely to be good, really, as some of these Texans rookies. So you are talking about space in the secondary for playmakers to find space and move the ball up and down the field. The Colts, of course, also lean a lot on tight ends and running backs in the passing game, namely Nyheim Hines. Stuff that worries me if I'm the Texas defense, because I just don't think they have the personnel to really keep up once we start getting into the second, third quarter, and you're running a lot of plays. So I think the Colts are going to be really successful on offense, frankly. I have them at 28 to 35 points, and the reason is I just don't see any realistic way in this game, as constructed, fully healthy, that the Texans get a meaningful number of stops. The Colts are also pretty good in the red zone once they get there, so it's not like we're going to see a lot of drives peter off generally. Matt Ryan does actually suck in the red zone notably a lot of times, and again, as we go forward in the season, I think that's a problem. In this game, not so much. I just think this is one of those classic Jonathan Taylor games and or Colts running games in general where the offensive line is just going to dominate in a lot of ways. So, can the Texans keep up? Well, I do like Davis Mills. That's the first thing I'm going to say. Watching him last year, I think he consistently makes correct decisions. He is not terribly immobile. While not being a big-time playmaker down the field, it wasn't as if he was terrified of pushing the ball down the field into the correct situation. So there are a lot of things I actually like about Davis Mills. However, he does still have issues, and this offense as a whole is still just not there quite yet as a good unit. The Colts defense, they bring over some changes themselves. Probably a rookie safety, Nick Cross starting, Stephon Gilmore, one of the previously one of the best corners in football. Some other stuff though looks really similar. So can this Texans team move the ball? Well, first on the ground, can they run the ball? No, no. So you do have a potentially good offensive line with the Texans. I will say that. I like their tackle duo a lot. I've been a huge fan of Titus Howard for a while now. I think he's just a straight-up good player, and he helps, especially in the run game. Kenyon Green is a first-round rookie, so he theoretically is very talented and could be pretty decent. Larry Tunsil, like I said, is good. Justin Britt, however, still much below average center, and A.J. Cann has been one of the worst starters by far in football for like 5 years now on the Jaguars. Division opponent this team should know well. And I'm shocked, frankly, that this team opted out of like Max Sharpring or some other guys in the offseason to start A.J. Cann. That's wild to me, and you're going to see why, especially in this game, because Colts have a guy named DeForest Buckner, and he's going to just eat him. He's going to destroy him. DeForest Buckner, whatever I think about him compared to other elite defensive tackles and his actual impact on some games, in matchups like this, he is that dude, and he will consistently beat A.J. Cann just to a pulp on the interior. He's just going to toss him around. Grover Stewart, too. Grover Stewart's a really good player. So you're talking about basically no movement, and if anything, very negative movement on the interior. Byron Coward, a really good player. Actually, I think good backup rotational guy, too, for the Colts coming over from the Patriots. It's just an issue. You're talking about basically no control on the interior of the offensive line whatsoever. Even if Kenyon Green steps in day one and is really good, if anything, he'll be neutral at best, which is just not, one spot is not good enough. And while on the edges, I think Titus Howard's a plus run blocker, Larry Tunsil really isn't. He's much better of a pass protector. And these Colts edges, while they're not as good against the run as they have been previously with guys like Al-Qadim Muhammad or Justin Houston, stuff like that, they're still reasonable. Quiddy Pay as a rookie was pretty decent. I can absolutely see a path towards him being really good, and he is at least a big enough athlete to keep up with Titus Howard, Larry Tunsil here. Yannick Ngakoue has his issues in run defense, especially at the point of attack, but he can still get into the backfield and get around guys, make plays, and he's in mostly correct positions at the very least. And the Colts just do such a good job in general of being disciplined on defense. Now, they are moving on from Matt Eberflus, who did leave, which does worry me. The guy has done not miracle quite, but incredible work with not quite incredible talent for multiple years, and I do think that's going to come into play later on the season. It's kind of a theme in this game. Not so much worried about it. Plus, these Colts linebackers are just so good, right? Darius Leonard, or Shaquille Leonard now, is incredible. Bobby Okereke is a really underrated player who I really like. Even Zaire Franklin, I think, is pretty goddamn good, especially as a third linebacker. So when those guys are clean, because this Texans run scheme is not special and these offensive line are not going to get to them, you're just talking about linebackers who are really good, really clean, and are going to consistently clean up a run game that's just not going to get it done in this game. So then it's on Davis Mills. And while I mentioned I do like Davis Mills, this Texans offense, just talent as a whole, is just really lagging behind still. He's probably going to be under some duress pass rushing. That part I actually think might go better than people expect, just because, like I said, DeForest Buckner is not quite the pass rusher that I think people think he is. He is going to be a threat in this game, 100%. He's going to kill, like I mentioned, A.J. Kanquet and a rookie, too. But those other guys, these other Colts interior players, not so much pass rushers. Quiddy and Taquan Lewis will move in there, too. I'm actually a little bit worried about him. But Yannick Ngakoue, Quiddy Pay, I've like the Texans tackles in that matchup generally. Now, they're not quite good enough for me to be like, oh, they're going to be completely clean, right? So it's not nothing. And Yannick Ngakoue is the type of elite speed rusher that can get around Laramie Tunsil at times. So there is a little bit of pass rush here. And with the weapons, man, it's kind of tough. Brandon Cooks is incredibly good. He's still an actual driver of offensive football, consistently open wins. But he's not, Devontae Adams. He's not these guys at the really, really high end. And their other receivers are just whatever. They did get Tyler Johnson off waivers in the Bucs, so I think very clearly will step in and be the second best receiver on this team. That's going to take a little bit of time for him to get into the offense. I don't think he's going to play that much in this game. And then Nico Collins, really whatever, as a rookie last year. Philip Dorsett has some useful skills, but isn't a primary receiver. So you're just not talking about a lot. And while the Colts, I do think, like I mentioned before, are potentially, as we go forward, a little vulnerable to certain things. Not in this game. Stephon Gilmore's still really good. I have faith that he's going to, even though he's been injured and missed a little bit of time here, I have faith that he's going to step in and be pretty good, especially in a Colts scheme that makes it really easy on corners. They put so much more impetus on safeties and even more linebackers in coverage in a lot of ways. But yeah, I have faith in Stephon Gilmore to be pretty good. Brandon Faison can play. Isaiah Rodgers can play. And Kenny Moore is one of the absolute best slot corners in football. So those guys are just better. And especially in this Colts scheme, like I keep mentioning, I just don't think they're going to get burned or beaten very quickly or very often, in which case David Mills, while I do think he's going to make right decisions and be able to find underneath spots that are, kind of open and move the ball a little bit, it's just so tough to sustain drives in this offensive environment for him against the Colts defense and the way that they react and recover to the ball in front of them, that I don't think you're ending up getting a ton of actual production. So I will give them credit. I'll give them 10 to 17 points, which is maybe more than some people are expecting. I do, like I said, like Davis Mills, Brandon Cooks is good enough to get open once or twice, but it's really hard for me to see actual explosive plays. Whereas it's pretty easy for me to see them kind of move, 1, 2, maybe first downs, a drive or something like that, and then a lot of punts. So I do think this is a comfortable Colts win. Not what I wanted necessarily when I came into this game, but unfortunately that's just how the matchup goes. It's just so hard for the Texans to keep up with any meaningful consistency. Betting-wise, yeah, I'm very comfortable with the Colts money line here, even at the value that it is. I'm also okay with them at -7. That's a little bit of a big number in week 1 of an NFL season on the road, absolutely, and that's why I don't love it. Probably wouldn't personally bet on it, but it's still something that I think this team just matches up so well that I'm not that worried about it. As far as the over-under, man, the 45.5, that's like, I just don't have a good feel for that specifically in this game, just because I think there's a chance the Colts could get there by themselves, to be honest. But also, there's a chance the Texans don't even score, or something like that, and you end up with a game that's like 28-7, 28-10, and I don't think it's worth even considering, to be honest with you. But overall, yeah, I do like the Colts a lot this game. Tough week one, and I do like the Texans team kind of more going forward, but it is what it is.